Okay, I'm going to be talking about spiritual shame in this video. If you have been following me over on Instagram, I did create a post on spiritual shame and what this is. And I didn't even realize that there was such a thing as spiritual shame until I really dug into this within myself and realized, yeah, I have been going through spiritual shame. And this isn't something that I was doing intentionally and that I realized from a conscious level of awareness. This was all unconscious, and it was all in how I was questioning my spiritual path. It was all in how I was questioning my spiritual work, how I was questioning my tarot, numerology, and almost shying away from going full steam and embracing who I am and what I love in the spiritual realm. Now, 4.5 years ago, I went through a massive shift. I have talked about it a few times, but during this time, I went deep into spirituality. And I'm sure many of you as well did this. I have a feeling a lot of us had gone through something similar, where I was like a sponge. I was learning everything I could get my hands on to do with spirituality, with esoteric, hermeticism, the tarot, astrology to a point, numerology to a point, but I was very, very curious and constantly learning. It was almost like I was thirsty. I was dying of thirst, and all of this information was just fueling myself. It was quenching my thirst. It was satisfying something within myself that had not been satisfied before, that had not been honored before, that had not been acknowledged before. So when I went through the deep dive in spirituality, I was still holding back on showing up fully. And if you know me from back in the day in Golden Heart Rising, my previous tarot channel that I had, it took me a while to get comfortable showing up in front of the camera, which I feel is kind of normal when you're not used to doing this, when you're not used to showing up in a certain way on camera and just showing up to the world and talking about things that you love talking about. I mean, there was a whole unfolding with this about who am I, where am I going with this, and what do I want to talk about? What do I want to share with everyone? Even though I had, even at that time years ago, a lot to talk about, I still had a very difficult time feeling comfortable and feeling in myself doing so. I would also hide my old channels, my personal social media channels. I completely vanished from my old life altogether. I told myself, or considered, that I was in the spiritual closet, hiding from many of my other friends from my past, and then opting for forming a new community, making new friends that I felt comfortable with in this spiritual life, this spiritual existence. Since then, I have also brought it back into balance. Now, I feel in the spiritual realm, we'll just call it that, in the spiritual practice, it can also become feel very safe, feel very removed from what we have experienced in the past. Now, there's nothing wrong with that as long as we are being cautious of escapism or moving too far into spirituality and losing our sense of self in the practical world, in reality, which I may have done, which is not a bad thing. I'm very glad and grateful that I did, because I learned through it. But I also had to be very cautious and bring myself back into my center to merge the best of both worlds, merge the best of what I've gained through my spiritual practice, but also in the practical world. And even that dynamic and that balance has taken a lot of fine-tuning and navigating and understanding within myself. What am I doing with this? Who am I? But there was always a little piece of me that was very apprehensive to fully just go all in and not hold back about what I love doing and who I am. And uncovering who I am was part of this entire process. I still am going through the process, but I discovered through this process that I also had a great deal of spiritual shame, and I didn't really know about it until recently, until I started becoming more and more confident with who I am and what I talk about and what I love doing. I always loved what I was doing, and that's a huge indicator. When you love what you're doing, when you have found something that lights you up, that you can have fun with, you are honoring yourself. You are honoring who you are. Now, it takes a lot of work to to come into confidence with that and to find one's wholeness and alignment with what they love to do. And especially if it's different than what maybe your parents had imposed on you, or society or cultural influences have imposed on us or you growing up in life. Some of us have had a very strict path of thinking or feeling that a certain path was the way, having a good job, having a good career, getting married, having children, like ticking off all the check boxes in life that may not necessarily have felt 100% in alignment. But when we push through on these paths, we can construct a story that becomes very hardwired. And once we start to step off of that path and feel into something amazing and something unique and something different, there are going to be conflicts between these two worlds. There are going to be conflicts between our old self, our old reality, and who we're stepping into, this new experience, this new life. And so spirituality historically has been very suppressed. This is not new news. This is part of history. It's part of our society. Even in modern society, you'll still hear the term woo, which is downgrading and downplaying a very significant aspect of ourselves. And it's horrible. It's horrible. And I had to work through this myself, even introducing or reintroducing myself into my old life and accepting who I am, and also accepting people to not accept me for who I am. And I had to come to terms with that and realize, if people are not going to accept me, or if people are going to make fun of me, then that's on them, and we're going to have to part ways, and that's okay. And to be okay with people judging and criticizing and seeing them for who they are and where they're coming from, and not be offended by it, and not to diminish myself because of how they are acting and they are behaving towards my beliefs and what I feel is right for myself. And it took a lot of work to go through. It took a lot of work to find myself, and then also trust it and strengthen the relationship within myself, and then to not question myself and question my values and my beliefs based on other people, to remain true to who I am, and to remain true to what I believe and what I love, and knowing the work that I do is so incredibly valuable and so important, and it's needed now more than ever. And I stand by it 100%, and I would never waver from it ever. And so having that conviction and having that knowing in who I am, what I value, what I believe, and my gifts that I can offer the world has taken a lot of work, a lot of work to arrive in this place. And I had a great deal of shame around who I was. I even had shame before I got into the spiritual work. Spiritual, practical, psychological, physical work. It's all connected. It's not just spiritual work. There's a spiritual component to it, of course, but it's all connected. And this is the division in society that has been created, where we look at the health and wellness industry, which is a huge, massive industry that singles in one domain. We look at the mental or the psychology, or even learning and the academic route, if you will. And then we look at the heart area, the heart or the spiritual, which has been completely removed from society. So we've had this incredible imbalance in society that has shoved certain aspects of our being in favor for others, right? And so this imbalance has created a lot of issues in society, and also with many of us who are stepping into possibly a new career path or aligning with who we are, developing a greater sense of self in our own gifts that do not adhere to the societal structures that have been in place for hundreds of years or many decades for that matter. And so when we start to do things differently, there's going to be a challenge within ourselves. If we start to believe a little bit differently than what everyone else does, then there's going to be a challenge within ourselves. We're going to have to dig deep and understand the underlying shame or fear that resides within the unconscious. And that shame and fear has been developed long ago. This is passed down. This is societal. It is ancestral. This is within our own belief system. So if we have created a life that we feel has been acceptable or is accepted through society, through our parents, again, doing well in school, creating a certain career path for ourselves, having a certain lifestyle, a certain quality of life, if you will. When we start to question it, when we start to push through it into something different, then of course we are going to find not only our inner truth, but we're also going to activate shame, that shame or fear and or both, that is existing within the unconscious that has been developed already. So if we are not honoring our true path, who we are, we're naturally going to have fear deeply embedded within our unconscious. Fear of being our true self, fear of being different, fear of shining in our light, fear of speaking our truth. There could be shame in there as well, feeling ashamed for who we are, feeling ashamed for feeling different, feeling ashamed for thinking differently than others, or seeing the world differently, or being interested in different things. And so those aspects within our unconscious, within the false belief system, within the shadow, will become activated, triggered when we are starting to break free and find the path of our own and start to step into our voice. And so for myself, I concealed a lot. It has been a long process of constant work. If you see my videos from a year ago, totally different person, but I kept on it because I had to break through this. I had to work through it, and I really didn't know the exact answers. I didn't really know exactly what was happening within myself. I had an idea, and there were some days where I had certainty. There were some days where I was questioning myself, and I would divert and I would go completely into an old way of functioning and being and trying to move myself back into old ways. Didn't work. I had to keep on track and honor myself. So I would go through some dead ends. I would go through some failures until I found my way in alignment. And it was a bit of oscillating between my old and my new, constantly back and forth. So if this is resonating with you, if you are embarking on a path that feels right in your heart, listen to it. But you may be up against some barriers, which is natural and is okay. So give yourself some time and grace, but keep pursuing what your heart is leading you towards. Do not hide yourself. Do not shy away from what feels right for you deep within yourself. Do not be ashamed of liking spiritual anything. Love it, live it, breathe it, talk about it. And if people are going to judge you and shame you for what you enjoy, then it's on them. Do not let anyone else's comments or beliefs or impositions or pressures fall on your shoulders. Know what you believe to be true within your heart and within your soul, and that is your superpower right there. As soon as we give in to what other people are imposing on us, their own criticisms, their own fear, their own shame, then we are losing ourselves. We are losing ourselves because of other people or the outer world. And then we also have to go through our own inner shames and our own inner fears, and we have a whole web of belief systems within ourselves that needs to be identified in order for us to step through fully. And I'll tell you, from the other side, it is liberating and it is freeing. And we are all doing ourselves a disservice if we are not honoring our voice, our truth, our beliefs, our values, and who we truly are. Some days will feel amazing. Some days we'll go back down into difficulties, into challenges. But as long as we're staying on course and following our heart, then we will override and overcome the challenges. We will find a way out. We will find a way forward. We will find solutions and modalities and different ways and different methods to strengthen ourselves and to learn through and to be able to push forward. Right? So spiritual shame is a thing. It is a thing. It's real. Many of us could be going through it, and it is going to be a continual process moving forward as we move through the stage of evolution. The spiritual aspect of ourselves is a part of ourself. It is a multidimensional part of ourself. It needs exploration. It needs curiosity. And it also needs us to align with it more in a way that we're not ashamed and in a way that we can embrace it fully within our beliefs. So again, do not be ashamed of what you are interested in, of what you believe, of who you are, of what lights you up. If you love talking about something interesting, zodiacs, full moons, numerology, past lives, Akashic records, whatever it is, whatever lights you up and brings you joy and brings you peace and flow and harmony, where you can play and you can feel like life doesn't even exist when you're in your zone. Follow that. Follow that, because this old way of trying to push uphill and trying to achieve and work and adhere to old structures is not working anymore. It's not. There's a whole different aspect of ourselves that we can access. And I'll tell you, since I have accessed this and honored it and not shying away from it and pursuing it, life has become easier. It hasn't been easy, the process. It has been extremely hard and challenging. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It has been incredibly challenging. But I didn't give up. I couldn't give up. I couldn't do that to myself. I couldn't quit. I couldn't silence myself anymore. But I had to go through all of these layers and chipping away to align more and more and more with who I am and my path forward. And it is liberating and empowering with every step you make. It is an unfolding. So follow your heart and trust your intuition, and then honor your heart and your intuition and who you truly are. And in time, you will become stronger and stronger with your knowing and with your path forward and with who you truly are. All right, so I'm going to leave it there. I'm wishing you all the best on your path forward and beyond. And I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Take care.